Hello, everyone. I'm very delighted to have this opportunity to speak with you about survey experiment today, which is now a mainstream and important methodology in the field of public administration and public management research. My name is Jianxiang Tan. I'm currently a PhD student supervised by Professor Yuantou Chandra. And here is an overview of the content that I will talk about today. So first, I will give you a brief introduction about what is a survey experiment, the types of survey experiment. After that, we will discuss the reasons for conducting survey experiment, where we can see the distinct advantages of survey experiment. This will set the stage for understanding why we should consider using this method in our own research. Following this, in the second part, we will focus on a specific type of survey experiment called the factorial survey experiment, which is now a widely used method in peer research. I will introduce the key concepts first, like what is a vignette, what is the between subjects design or within subjects design, and then I will go through the whole design process of a factorial survey experiment. And finally, I will give you a case data to show you how to do the analysis in R. So I hope by the end of this session, you can gain a clear understanding of how to design and analyze survey experiments and feel confident applying these methods in your own research. So now we can start with the introduction part. So what is a survey experiment? A survey experiment can be understood as a research method where researchers manipulate their independent variables and observe their effects on the dependent variables by conducting surveys on a representative sample of a target population. So in a simple way, we can understand a survey experiment is an experiment conducted on a survey. So this is a figure drawn by Thomas, showing that the number of publications mentioning survey experiment in the social science from 1990 to 2021. So from this figure, we can see there is an increasing trend of the survey experiment being used as a method of data collection in the social science research. Especially in the 2020, there are nearly 1,700 publications that use the survey experiment as their research method. So for the types of survey experiment, the first one is split ballot experiment, which is a research design used to assess how different question formats or survey designs that may affect the respondents' answers. In this type of experiment, participants are usually divided into two groups. One group receiving each group receiving a different version of a survey. This may allow researchers to test the effect of different question wording, the word options, or the presentation of information that may affect respondents' opinions and behaviors. It may be used to probe methodological or measurement issues like test whether the order of question may affect citizens' voting behavior. And then the second one is the list experiment, which is used to measure sensitive topics or opinions that respondents may show dishonest or evasive answering behaviors. In a typical list experiment, respondents are divided into two groups. One group is presented with a list of items that may include several insensitive items, while the other group receives the same list but will add an additional sensitive item related to the topic of interest. So respondents are asked to report how many items they agree with or how many items apply to them, but they don't need to specify which items they are applied to or agree with. So the third one is factorial survey experiment, or usually called the vignette survey experiment. The core idea of this experiment is to manipulate multiple variables by constructing virtual situations, and this is a vignette, and observing how these variables may work together to influence respondents' judgments or decisions. And the vignette is usually constructed with various features of the independent variables. And the final one is the conjoint experiment, which many use to understand how people value different attributes that may up a product or a decision. Like in real life, when we buy a product, our decision are usually based on a combination of several considerations, like the product's price, its quality, its functions, and the user reviews or the user experiences. And the conjoint experiments usually provided the respondents with a set of choices and their attributes, and the respondents are asked to choose their preferred options. So here are several examples that may represent these four kinds of survey experiments. For the experiment, the first experiment, the researchers want to know whether the order of the food name will affect the respondents' dinner choices. The first version, they have the Chinese food, Thai food, Vietnamese food, and Japanese food. And the second version, they put the Thai food as the first, and the second one is Chinese food. The third one is Japanese food, and the final one is Vietnamese food. So this is obviously a split ballot experiment as they only change the order of the options. And the second one, now they want to know how the different attributes of the restaurant may affect citizens' choices. So for restaurant A and restaurant B, there are four attributes: the cuisine type, the price, the location, and the reputation. So the respondents are asked to choose their preferred restaurant. So this is a conjoint experiment. And the third one, the university want to know students' support for academic honesty policy. So they provide the control group with a list of say 3 items and the treatment with a list of 4 items. We can say the first 3 items are the same in both control and treatment groups, but in the treatment group, they add an additional item, talks about whether the student supports the implement of an academic honesty policy. So this is a list experiment. And the final one, the researchers want to know the impact of financial reporting transparency on citizens' understanding. So they have two independent variables, the content clarification and the presentation format. For content clarification, they have two attributes, the absence or presence. And for the presentation format, they have two levels, the traditional or visual presentation format. And so they create 4 groups and put the respondents randomly into one of the 4 groups. So this is a factorial survey experiment. Here is a brief comparison of the 4 types of survey experiment. So for the split ballot experiment, the purpose is that many used to test the impact of wording, context, or framing on respondents' answers. The key features is that it uses different survey versions with similar or same content, but only change the order or the framing structures. And the strength is that it's very simple to implement, and it can gain insights into question design and the wording effects. But the limitation is that we can see it's very simple and it may limit the complexity of the research. And also it many used in some public polling. And the second one is list experiment, and many used to assess the prevalence of sensitive behaviors or opinions while reducing bias. Respondents many ask to count items without specifics. They only need to mention how many items they agree with. And then the strength is may use to help to reduce biases and reveals the respondents' hidden attitudes. But the limitation is that it does not provide specific information on which items were they agreed with or they not agree with. And the application is usually used for some sensitive topics such as political support, voting behaviors, and drug use. The third one is the factorial survey experiments mainly used to examine how specific attributes influence respondents' evaluations and decisions. And the three features is that the factorial survey experiment may contain the relates with various attributes and levels. And the strength is that it can give us a detailed attribute importance, how these attributes or the independent variables may affect the dependent variables. The limitations is that some factorial survey experiment combine with may come with some cognitive load, and some factorial survey experiment may have a higher level of design complexity that may affect citizens the respondents choices. And the application is widely used in peer research. And the final one is conjoint experiment used to test how different attributes and their levels may affect people's preferences. They usually provide the respondents with multiple pairs of choices, and it can gain insights into citizens' preferences and trade-offs based on different attributes. And it requires careful attribute selection, and it's also commonly used in peer research. Then why do we need to conduct a survey experiment? While conventional survey research is a powerful tool for gathering data, but it also has some significant limitations. The first one is the correlation but not causation. It means that the conventional survey research often struggles to establish a clear causal relationships between the variables. It can identify correlations, but they do not provide evidence of causation. For example, if a survey finds that higher education levels may correlate with higher individuals' income, it does not prove that it's the education that causes an increase in individual income. The second limitation is the selection bias, means that individuals who participate in a survey are not representative of the broader population. The third one is the spurious correlation, means the relationship between two correlated variables are actually influenced by a third variable. Like in this picture, the ice cream sales may correlate with sunburn rate, but they are actually influenced by the increase in temperature. The fourth one is the omitted variables, means in the survey the researchers may ignore the some other important variables that may influence both independent and dependent variables. The final one is a reverse causation, means that the direction of causality is opposite to what is assumed. For example, a survey might find the individuals who report higher levels of stress also report lower levels of physical activity. One might conclude that it's the stress leads to the decreased physical activity, but we also it's also be possible that it's the lower physical activity that contributes to the higher level of stress. Well, survey experiments may help to address these limitations through the establishment of an internal validity, which is one of the most distinct advantages of survey experiments compared to the conventional survey research. An internal validity refers to the extent to which a study can establish a causal relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable. There are usually three requirements for causality. The first one is the two variables must be related. The relationship between the two variables must be independent of other spurious causes, and the cause must happen before the effect in time. The survey experiment can help build a controlled conditions for the establishment of this causality. First, it involves manipulating independent variables to observe how these changes in independent variables affect participants' responses. This is essential for establishing the internal validity as it helps demonstrate and test whether the changes in the independent variables can lead to the changes in the dependent variables. And second, it can provide a controlled environment where external variables can be minimized. This control enhances the reliability of the results compared to standard surveys that may be influenced by other ignored or omitted variables. And the third one is that in survey experiment, the respondents will receive the treatment first, and then we will measure the outcomes. So all these controlled conditions can help us to build a strong internal validity. And also for external validity, while some articles may criticize that survey experiments often have a limited external validity, but but it can establish a strong external validity if it covers at least four aspects of the experimental design. The first is whether the participants resemble the actors who are ordinarily confronted with these stimuli. For example, if you want to study voter behaviors, then your participants must be the citizens who have the voting rights. And then second one is whether the context within which actors operate resembles the context of interests. For example, if you want to study one public service, then your participants must be the users of these public services. The third one is whether the stimuli used in this study resembles the stimuli of interest in the world. This means the stimuli, or we can say the vignettes in your survey experiment, can find the real life examples or real life cases. Like if you want to study one function of an AI chatbot, then you may need to find a similar AI function of the real world cases. And the final one is whether outcome measures resemble the actual outcomes of theoretical or practical interest. And also a practical way to demonstrate external validity of the target population is that you can compare the characteristics of the sample with those of the national population. Like this is an example from a journal paper. Like they compared the sample with the characteristics of the internet users in China.